All right, everybody, and welcome back to another interesting bit of news for Darkest Dungeon 2. Today, we got our next update, and a fairly big one at that. Now, first of all, this update is only available in the beta branch, so you do have to go to the Coming in Hot beta branch on Steam or the experimental branch on EGS. And what that means really is that this is still something that is heavily in development. So if you want to just keep playing on your regular version of the game, you can, but if you want to try this out, definitely give it a shot. Just do be warned that it may mess up your regular playthrough, so you might want to make a backup of that before you do so. Do make sure to post any of your impressions in the feedback channel. Red Hook is always listening back for this kind of stuff, and they definitely take into account everything that everybody says. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is this update about? Well, it's called the Quality of Life Experimental Update, and there are quite a few major changes here to take a look at. The first major change we're going to be taking a look at here is the biggest one, and that is the Death Armor token system. So what exactly is this? Well, you can go ahead and read that there, but I'll give you a quick synopsis, and that is that the death blow resist on enemies, not on heroes, this doesn't apply to heroes, on enemies has been removed. It is no longer percentage based, it is now token based. This only applies to enemies that did have DBR originally, so it doesn't apply to all enemies. Still only certain enemies are given these, but enemies that did have DBR will now be given a Death Armor token. And the way that this works essentially is that the enemy will be able to survive Death's Door assuming that they have one of these tokens. So once they get hit down the Death's Door, you can then hit them again. It will remove one of those tokens, and then if they have none left, they can go ahead and die the next time that you hit them on Death's Door. And the reason for this change was to try and remove some of the RNG. You know, if you ever had those cases where a boss or an enemy lived like 7 turns, that is generally no longer possible, and at least you will know if they are going to continue to survive. Now, there are quite a few changes that come with this. There is a new token that has been added to the game, and every ability that interacted with DBR before has now been changed to interact with Death Armor, and that information is all here in the patch notes. Do keep in mind the patch notes are not in the game currently. They are only available on the actual Discord, the official Discord here, so make sure that you join the Discord. But one of the biggest other changes that comes with this is the new ability called Execution. Execution is essentially a new modifier to some abilities, mainly abilities that had a DBR removal before. So one example would be Wicked Slice, and Wicked Slice, when upgraded, will now give you 1 execution. And what that means is it essentially ignores 1 Death Armor token. So if an enemy has a Death Armor token and you have a hero that is using an ability that has 1 execution, if you hit them down to Death's Door, they will then instantly die instead of just going to Death's Door with an armor token. Or if they have 2 tokens and they're on Death's Door and you hit them with an ability that has execution, it will then instantly kill them because the execution removes 1 of the tokens, and then the damage will hit them on Death's Door. So pretty interesting stuff there. Definitely something that's going to take some time for us to kind of figure out. I don't really know how it feels yet. I don't know how people are going to react to it. I do think it is a interesting take on it. I'm excited to kind of give my thoughts on it after I have some time to play it. Now, the next major change that has happened is the swap hero paths at the inn. So now you are able to swap your hero paths when you get to the inn for a cost. I do believe the cost is 32 relics, and essentially this just means that you can get to the inn and you can spend your currency on changing your highwayman from Yellow Hand to Rogue. I personally am a big fan of this change. This is something that I feel allows a lot of players to adjust their run as things happen, which is something that is very good about the roguelike aspect of this game. I will have to see how it plays out, how it's balanced, what the cost feels like. Is it too much? Is it too little? I know some people have concerns about people just swapping their leper to monarch at the end of their run, but 32 relics is a good amount of money, it may stop you from being able to buy something that you do really need or remove a quirk or whatever the case is. So like I said, this is experimental. We'll have to see how the balance feels, but definitely try it out. It is pretty interesting. The other thing is also choosing a hero replacement at the inn. And this is a change that I am so happy to have, especially considering the fact that I've lost a few runs recently because I lost a hero. This definitely gives the player that agency of, hey, you may have lost a hero, but now you don't have just a random one that shows up at the inn. You get to pick a replacement hero, assuming of course you have that hero unlocked and it's not the hero that just died. You are actually able to kind of formulate. You can go, okay, I lost my flag. Who from the roster remaining would be a good replacement for the team that we have? And you can actually build a team again. And I think that's some really good player agency. So kudos to Red Hook for this one. I think this helps with one of the biggest issues in the game currently, and that is when you lose a hero, you pretty much quit the run. So very interesting. And then another major change here is that faction fights are back in road battles. So there are now 2 barrier types in every region. Three, excuse me. There's Gaunts, there's pillagers or bandits, and now there are also faction fights. So you are able to run into the local region enemies on road fights. This is a good change. It just adds more dynamic fights. It adds more interesting things. It also allows you to just experience the local enemies a lot more. And that's something that I enjoy because I get a little bit tired of running into bandits every single fight. Now, there are a whole slew of other changes that have been added here. I'm not going to go into every single one of them, but there are quite a few ones that are pretty interesting. One here that is something that a lot of people have asked about, and one that I've seen a lot, is that you can now choose the skill order. This is something that a lot of people took advantage of in Darkest Dungeon 1. I know I did, but basically the order in which you select the hero's abilities will show up in that same order on the hotbar at the bottom. So if you kind of have like I want all my attacks on the left and my support abilities on the right, especially if you're using the number keys to select those abilities, you can kind of build something that works best for you and how you feel. And I think that's a really good quality of life change. Another major change that I think really helps with the pain of losing a hero is now that the hero remains, instead of providing candles, will now provide 2 mastery upon delivery. Now, this mastery bonus is not available for hero remains found in the valley. I think that's to stop people just grinding out, like killing a bunch of heroes that they didn't want to use, and then just being able to pick the team they want at the inn and just have a bunch of mastery points. So good job there. If you want to kill a bunch of heroes anyway in the second region and try your luck there, then kudos to you if you'd like to. But I think this does fix a big issue of the game as well, just giving you those mastery points that if you do lose a hero, you're at least guaranteed to, if you get to the inn, get 2 mastery points so your new hero can start off with at least a few abilities upgraded. So really cool change there. Now, moving on, we do have quite a few changes to heroes in the game, but there are a few that I really want to focus on. Now, Grave Robber and Highwayman have basically just had their abilities Glint in the Dark and Wicked Slice changed to now have the new Execution property added to them when upgraded. In fact, Glint in the Dark when upgraded, and if you have Stealth, will remove 3 tokens, which is crazy. It basically will insta-kill any enemy that gets knocked to death doors, so that is pretty cool. I do like to see that. Now, Hellion has also had a change, and one that I didn't expect to see coming, and that is that Bloodlust has been changed. So Bloodlust, when upgraded, will now provide a buff that gives Execution 1 versus bleeding targets for 5 rounds. So that is really powerful. You can build a pretty good bleed team, have a Bloodlusted Hellion, and then allow her to just peel off tokens. Now, it does have to be a damaging ability, so you can't use something like Yawp to just like clear out the front 2 rows of the foot soldiers in the Tangle, but hey, this is still a pretty cool change. I think this is very thematic, and it is one of the abilities that Hellion was definitely suffering from not using a lot. But the big one that I really want to talk about here is the Occultist. The Occultist has had a huge amount of changes to his kit, right? So Sacrificial Stab now, Sacrificial Stab Plush, I should say, now has that new execution property. One of the biggest ones that has changed now is that Binding Shadows can now be used from ranks 2, 3, and 4 instead of 1, 2, and 3. This is something that a lot of people, myself included, have wanted because it has felt very weird to basically have Sac Stab and Binding Shadows do the exact same thing. Now, it no longer generates unchecked power versus combo targets, so it has changed how it works a little bit here, but it does inflict a minus debuff resist, 10% and 15% for regular and advanced, or upgraded, I should say, versus combo targets. So it does help in applying debuffs to enemies, which is pretty cool. It gives it its own flavor versus Sac Stab, which is something that I really enjoy. It's not as great for generating up or even able to generate up from that anymore, but it does have its own use case and can be used from the back ranks, which again is something very, very cool. Binding Shadow's chance of generating unchecked power has now been increased, though, for the random just being able to do it on use from 50 to 66% on upgraded. So still can generate up, and it has a higher chance to do so randomly. Very, very good. Another massive change, and one that I'm so happy to see finally, is that Malediction now lasts for 3 rounds instead of 3 turns. Now, the reason that this is so really cool is that Malediction is one of those abilities that's been memed on for ages. It's really been considered not super useful. But with this, it's very effective, especially against bosses, which is kind of what Malediction is made for. It's really just to apply to a big enemy that everybody's going to be hitting, and then allowing you to stack those dots over time. Well, okay, that's like saying ATM machine, sorry, allowing you to stack those dots and really get that damage going. But the reason this is so good now is that instead of it being turn-based, which in the case of, say, the Librarian or any of the bosses really who had multiple turns per round, they would be able to just peel through this debuff immediately. Now they are forced to have it for 3 rounds, giving you many, many, many more opportunities to actually get Malediction to work. There have also been some changes to his curses and hexes. Weakening Curse now applies 2 weak tokens instead of 1 at base, which is really cool because this actually feels like it has some value now. And Weakening Curse Plus now removes all strength tokens from the target before applying the weak tokens, very similar to something like the Yellow Hand version of Double Cross. Now, we do also have Vulnerability Hex, which again, the regular version now applies 2 vulnerable tokens instead of 1. There is loads more value there. And the upgraded version now removes all block tokens before applying those vulnerable tokens, again, making it much more useful. The next thing we have here is Weird Reconstruction, getting the minimum threshold raised from 33% to 50, meaning that you can use Weird much earlier, which makes it a much more effective heal. It's still not great, it's still not perfect, but you can use it much earlier, so you're not as dependent on waiting for your hero to get to really scary health before you can use Weird Reconstruction. It gives you more opportunities to get those heals off. Now, looking here, we do have a large change to all the beasts here. Essentially, this is just going through all of the differences on Deathblow Resist has now changed to Death Armor. I'm not going to go through all of these individually. You can take a look at all of them or join the Discord yourself and take a look at them, but there are quite a few things here. Pit Fighter has also gotten some changes that make him a little bit different. His Accelerant ability is now a regular initiative action, meaning it is no longer a free action, so he has to actually take an action to do that. It is now a high priority skill that is used in round 1 rather than being delayed to round 2, so he will use Accelerant off the get, but he will also not be able to do damage that first round, at least on his first turn, because he does get 2 turns around. And it now grants 1 strength and 1 dodge token on use. So definitely feels a bit more potent to me, makes him stronger. Pretty much every time he uses it, he's going to get strength, he's going to be harder to hit, and makes him a much higher threat, which is good. He is a big enemy, and I think he definitely deserves a little bit of love. Another set of enemies that have gotten some pretty interesting things, and this kind of goes into the Death Armor interactions, is that the Fallen Templar and the Knight now get, and Engard will now grant Death Armor. So that definitely kind of, before they had a much higher death blow resist, and this token system probably wouldn't have felt as potent, but now that they can generate these tokens, that's pretty cool. This still makes some pretty tough enemies, so definitely interesting to see the other ways that Red Hook might integrate Death Armor tokens into abilities. Now, let's get into the next big change. I will say this is spoilers for the Confession 3 boss if you don't want to see these changes, but there have been some changes to the Focused Fault finally. This hopefully will be the last pass at this boss, but we will have to see how it goes. So there are quite a few things to take here. I haven't had a chance to play this fight yet, so I can't give my thoughts on it, but we can just read through a couple of these changes and we'll see how it feels. This has been the biggest issue with the game for a lot of people, is this fight. I hope this kind of fixes some of the issues. We'll have to see how it goes, and I really hope that we don't get too many more of these updates, because I think they just need to settle on it and just let people deal with it not being a great boss, but we'll have to take a look. So the scene tokens max stacks have been reduced. Scene tokens are now fully removed when a hero is in stealth. Okay, so stealth now has a bit more play. Scene tokens are removed from an enemy when they miss that hero. Okay, so dodge plays get a bit more into it. Blind is no longer ignored on certain skills for the eye stalks and the focus fault. Interesting. So blind actually has some ability here. We have some debuff resist that they're applying. The amount of tokens has been changed, and speed has been reduced on the cloistered eyes, the cluster of eyes, whichever ones they are. The focus fault itself no longer gains an immediate action upon entering phase 2. That's pretty good. Actions per round have been increased though from 2 to 3, so it has more turns. Okay, and the first turn will always be Behold. Well, at least we know what it will be, so that's good. Has reduced bleed, blight, and burn resistance. Okay, dot is a very effective way of dealing with it before, so even more so now. The apply to attacker when crit combo buff has been removed. Okay, so it no longer just applies combo on crit, and then it's reduced its debuff resistance as well. The ability Behold is no longer a free action on round start. It no longer has a chance to apply weak tokens. It now applies 2, down from 3, random tokens from a selection of vulnerable and daze, and it now only targets hero with a scene token or a random hero if there are no scene tokens. Okay, so it always starts off with Behold. It will give the scene enemy or scene heroes vulnerable and daze. Okay, that's fine. At least you know where it's going to go, so that's definitely something. And then we have Suppress, which no longer targets the hero party when 2 heroes have combo tokens. Now requires no scene tokens and 3 positive tokens. Okay, so when they have too many tokens, it will then use Suppress. That, I think, makes more sense to me. If you have a Highwayman that's stacking a bunch of tokens, can still hit multiple heroes as long as they meet the conditions. It no longer guaranteed to use the skill when the conditions are met, because it's a bit more random. Damage has been increased a fair amount, 1 to 6 to 8. Oh my gosh, now deals +2 and reduces flame. Okay, the scaling has been increased. I'm guessing they're doing this because there's more ways to remove the scene tokens, so they had to increase the damage to make up for it. And again, this is probably a counter to taunt plays to stop people from just spamming taunt. Again, these changes on paper, I'm not sure how they feel. I'm definitely going to have to take a look at them in game, but there have been changes, so interesting to see here. We'll have to see how that plays out. There's also some changes to the Confession 1 and 2 boss. Yeah, overall, a lot of good changes in my opinion. I'm very curious to see how the death armor system plays out. I'm really excited to see the new hero selection path kind of thing and the dead hero system. I think that's going to fix a lot of issues with being able to finish a run. And as far as Focus Fault goes, we'll have to see. But the sleeper update here has definitely been the Occultist. This is a huge change, and I'm really excited to see if they start looking at this and maybe thinking about balance. This gives me hope that there is a hero balance in the works, and this is kind of the test for it. So really excited to see these changes. Again, if you enjoyed this video and you want to know more about the game and you want to check out these updates yourself, definitely come by the stream, check out the YouTube. If you're not already subscribed, do consider subscribing. Again, if you want to see these patch notes, they are available in the Darkest Dungeon official Discord. And yeah, thanks everybody for watching. I'm going to be going live soon and checking out these updates myself. So if you want to come by and do that, definitely do. And yeah, I'll catch you all in the next video.